One of the things about the post-9/11 era in our country is that we've had these incredibly long wars in which a very small proportion of the U.S. population has actually fought. That means that the people who have fought in our post-9/11 wars have often served multiple tours, redeployment after redeployment. I say that because if you know anybody who served in Afghanistan, this might be a good time to reach out and just be in touch. It is a super difficult thing to see what's happening in Afghanistan right now for everyone. But for Americans who shed blood trying to prevent something like this from happening, this is something different and darker and perhaps more potent than what the rest of us can know. So it's a good time to look out for the veterans in your life. The lightning-quick Taliban takeover almost all of Afghanistan, except the capital region this past week, has forced tens of thousands of civilians to flee wherever they lived, to flood into Kabul. We're seeing scenes of people sleeping in parks and mosques now. The Wall Street Journal reporting today that having taken most of the rest of the country already, the Taliban is now preparing for a march on Kabul itself. Today, U.S. troops deploying back there to help with the evacuation effort. They started arriving in Kabul. The Washington Post reports tonight that U.S. personnel at the embassy in Kabul have started destroying classified documents and equipment. An internal memo obtained by the Post goes so far as to call for the destruction of anything involving embassy or agency logos or American flags or any other items which could be misused in propaganda efforts. They're shutting down, evacuating, and trying to make sure what's left behind doesn't fall into the worst possible hands. This is the doomsday scenario that we're not sure if anybody planned well enough for. To help us better understand what this means in practical terms and what this means for Afghan allies and the Americans who served there, we're joined by Jake Auchincloss. He served as a Marine infantry commander in Afghanistan. He's now a congressman from Massachusetts. Congressman Auchincloss, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it's a difficult day.
Good to be back with you, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
What is your reaction to seeing the news? We spoke a few weeks ago after the U.S. withdrawal was well and truly underway. Obviously, this isn't something that wasn't predicted, but perhaps the speed of it is a bit of a surprise.
When I was a platoon commander in Helmand in 2012, the Taliban had a maxim. They would say, "You have the watches, but we have the time." We could win battles for the next century in Afghanistan against the Taliban and still lose the war, because counterinsurgency does not admit of a military solution. It requires political leadership, and only the Afghans can do that. What the Americans must do right now is defend personnel from the United States who are in Afghanistan. We must evacuate our allied interpreters and other contractors who served alongside us for the last 2 decades. And we've got to maintain over-the-horizon counterterrorism operations to prevent any attacks on the homeland. Those are our 3 missions right now.
In terms of the evacuation, when you were here a few weeks ago, we talked about the effort to evacuate Afghan allies, to protect these thousands of Afghan citizens who served as interpreters for the U.S., who served as support personnel for U.S. troops there and for U.S. agencies, media organizations. We have seen efforts this week by President Biden to order an escalation, essentially, in the pace of those evacuation efforts. But I think the wide consensus is that those efforts are still not enough, and they're still too slow, even with them being speeded up this week. Do you share that view?
I share the concern that we need to have a sense of urgency around evacuating the tens of thousands of allies who served alongside us as interpreters or truck drivers or medical personnel in Afghanistan. This president, though, has delivered on his promises to date. This president has said he was going to get 100 million shots in arms, and he doubled that. This president has said he was going to get a bipartisan infrastructure deal. He's delivering that. I have confidence in this president to keep America's word and to evacuate really the majority of people who served alongside of us.
In terms of the logistical efforts right now, we are seeing thousands of Marines, thousands of troops heading back in to facilitate evacuation efforts. Do you anticipate that that effectively that redeployment of thousands of U.S. troops might not be a short-term thing, that those troops might be there as essentially a redeployed stabilization force to facilitate the kind of evacuation efforts that you were talking about that can't be done instantly, and efforts to protect the U.S. Embassy, which will be a matter of a factor of a magnitude different in terms of its practical necessities if the embassy is in a Kabul that is now held under Taliban control.
The security and stability of Kabul is clearly a primary concern right now, and I suspect and will certainly raise it in the security briefing that members of Congress will be getting in a couple of weeks' time. Embassy security is core to the Marine Corps mission. I have the utmost confidence that the Marines are going to be able to do that mission for as long as the president directs them to. The larger concern here is, can we maintain stability in Kabul for long enough to broker a power-sharing agreement with the Taliban that provides the leverage necessary for the United States to have a humanitarian and a diplomatic footprint, in the country so that we can sustain some of the hard-won gains we made in economic development and protecting the rights of women and girls and civil society and the rule of law. The power-sharing agreement really rests on the security of Kabul, and that's why the capital region is of critical importance right now.
Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss, who served in Afghanistan as a United States Marine. Sir, thank you for joining us tonight. I know it's a tough time.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'll be right back.